Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Osoyoos Town Council, Monday, March 2nd, 2020 at 2 p.m. in Council Chambers. So first off, we will do the adoption of some minutes, and there are 5 of them. The Committee of the Whole minutes of February the 18th, the regular open minutes of February the 18th, public hearing minutes of February the 18th, special open minutes of February the 18th, and special open minutes from February the 21st, all in 2020. Could I have a motion, please, to accept all those minutes? Thank you. Councillor Bennett, Councillor Rhodes, all in favor. Thank you. No business arising from prior minutes? Any introduction of late items? Thank you. Could we have a motion then to accept the agenda as approved? Councillor Harvey, Councillor King, all in favor? Thank you. No delegations, no water matters, no correspondence. We're practically done.
Oh, you're dreaming.
First up then is a bylaws, and that would be a zoning amendment bylaw. Ms. McKay.
Thank you, Mayor McCorda. Am I on?
Yep, you're on.
Sorry. So council will recall that this is zoning amendment bylaw number 1085.130, 2020. The applicant was Mr. Ken Davro, and the civic address of the property is 5820 89th Street. There is currently occupied with a commercial building with residential uses above. And this purpose of this report is request that council consider granting third reading to the zoning amendment bylaw number 1085.130. This bylaw, if adopted, would add the use of shopping center to the C7 special commercial zone. Now council moved to accept the application and grant a first and second reading to the amending bylaw at their regular meeting on February 3rd, 2020, and then a public hearing was subsequently held on February 18th, 2020. And the minutes of that meeting are currently in draft form and are intended to be adopted today, and they just were. So, moving right along. I was paying attention. So the owner has applied for the amendment to the C7 special zone, special commercial zone, to allow for an increase in allowable commercial uses. And staff are supportive of this as a neighborhood location is suitable for a variety of businesses to serve the adjacent tourist accommodations and local residents. And the council will recall that at the public hearing, is attended by 3 residents of the subject property and or owners of units in the strata residential units above, and staff answered questions of the attendees, but no real major concerns were raised. So the implications with respect to the community are promoting commercial uses benefits the community, supports continued commercial growth within our limited land base. Organizationally, now staff may need to process the building permit for renovations to the interior of the unit. That would be, of course, dependent on any future businesses that would like to locate in the building. There's no impact to our budget associated with this report or the proposed rezoning. And again, this would then be placed on a future council agenda for final adoption should council proceed to third reading today. With respect to sustainability and town policy for commercial growth, again, includes avoiding sprawling development, and the options today before council are option number 1, council grants third reading, or option 2, council defeats the bylaw at third reading. Of course, staff are recommending option 1, as previously noted. Thank you, Mayor McCorda.
Thank you very much. Councillor King?
Yeah, I'll move option number 1, grant third reading.
Is there a seconder? Anyone wish to speak to this? Go ahead, Councillor Rhodes.
No.
Oh, sorry.
No, you were just indicating that.
Oh, pardon me. Saw the hand up. Anybody need to speak to this? We have been through this. The public hearing was, I think, answered the questions that some of the people had. So it's been moved and seconded that we go with option 1. All in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Ms. McKay, this would be you again. This would be a zoning amendment bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor McCorda. Now, council may recall that this item was before council at a previous meeting, and this is a request to amend at second reading for property located at 5401 Lakeshore Drive, which is Casa de Milo. The applicant is Deborah Cromwell for the strata, and the property again is strata KAS 2860, which is Casa de Milo. And the purpose of this report is that council consider amending zoning bylaw amendment number 1085.129 The amending bylaw, if adopted, will allow for a new residential unit to be used for employee housing to be located within the existing commercial building. And the bylaw is site-specific, as will only apply to this particular property within the C4 zone. So this item came before council on February 3rd with a recommendation to accept the application, read the zoning amendment bylaw for first and second time, and to set the public hearing. Following the February 3rd meeting council, it was determined that the legal description of the amending bylaw was incorrect. The bylaw is therefore being brought forward today so that council may consider second reading as amended. So, council will recall the applicant is proposing to convert a vacant space within the common property to allow for a residential unit for employee housing. A text amendment is required as the C4 zone allows for only one dwelling unit within a commercial building for use by the owner, manager, or proprietor of the property. The subject property is designated tourist commercial in the OCP, and the designation accommodates a range of zones to allow for residential uses and businesses that support the tourism sector. In turn, the tourism sector generates a need for additional employees. The proposed use of this property to allow for an accommodation for staff of the facility is considered to be in conformance with the OCP. Staff is therefore of the opinion that this location is suitable for the proposed use and will enable a new residential suite for use by employees of Casa, Milo. Implications of the community, again, providing opportunities for employee housing, helps support our growing need for staff and staff accommodation within our community. Organizationally, a building permit will be required in order to proceed with the proposed changes to the existing building. No implications to the budget associated with this report. Staff are proposing a public hearing date of March 16th, 2020 at 4 p.m. and notification of the public hearing will be in compliance with the Local Government Act following a resolution of council to set that public hearing. Sustainability, town policy for commercial growth, again, avoids urban sprawl. Options before council today, option number 1 in 3 parts. A, council received second reading of bylaw number 1085.129/2020. B, council reads zoning amendment bylaw number 1085.129/2020 for a second time as amended. C, council sets a public hearing date of March 16, 2020 at 4 p.m. Or 2, council requests additional information before proceeding further. Staff are recommending option 1. Thank you, Mayor McCoy.
Thank you very much. Now, Mrs. Hilson, do we require, if we were to go with option 1, that they be divided into 3 different?
Yes.
Okay. That's slightly different than what I've got here, so that's why I'm just checking. Councillor Rhodes.
It should be in 3 parts.
Yes, it is here, but not here, but that's all right. We'll do it in my binder. That's okay. That's why I asked. Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Member Cordoff. I move staff recommend option 1A.
1A, that we rescind the second reading. Councillor King, you seconding that? Any concerns about that one?
I just have,
Yes.
I have a question before. I don't
Yes.
think it'll really make a difference. Does it matter which building it's going in? They got 4 different buildings there.
No.
Okay, that's what I thought.
It's thank you, Councillor King, through the chair. It does state that it will be within a commercial building. That's the way it will be worded in the bylaw, but we aren't concerned about which building that is. It's actually, the zone would be adopted on the property itself, so.
Okay. All right, so it's been moved and seconded that we go with option 1A. All in favor? Good, thank you. That's carried. We need another motion. Is there someone else? Councillor King?
Yeah, I'll move 1B.
That the amendment bylaw be read, or that the bylaw be read as for a second reading as amended. Councillor Rhodes is seconding that. Any concerns about this one? No, makes sense. All in favor? Thank you. And how about 1C? You're going to make that. Councillor Harvey is making that motion, and Councillor King is seconding that. Any concerns about it, that we have a public hearing on March 16th? All in favor? Thank you very much. So we're on to business. There is a Mayor and Council meeting report for Councillor Harvey, who went to a couple of meetings in January and February with the Okanagan Regional Library. Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to? Councillor Rhodes, you're moving that. Councillor Bennett seconding that we approve this. All in favor? Thank you. And next is the items requiring council direction on the financial plan. Mr. Zackel.
Thank you, Mayor McCordoff. So at our February 18th, 2020 public open meeting of council, a number of submissions were heard by council to move the financial plan forward. Direction regarding these financial requests are required, and as I reach each one of them, I'm requesting a resolution of council to deal with each
Okay.
one. So the first one that we had was the Osoyoos Lake Paddle Club. Wendy Barlow from the Osoyoos Lake Paddle Club made a presentation to council. The request for funding is $6,000 to put on our third annual Osoyoos Dragon Boat Festival. This function was supported by council in 2019 from the RMI Visitor Activity Enhancement Program in an amount of $5,000. The RMI funding has a component for special event funding that is available to assist with sponsoring events that will enhance visitor experiences and create attractions. The expenditure of these funds is to support activities that will bring more people into our local overnight accommodation that generates municipal and district tax funds and promotes economic development in town. Current funds available for the RMI program under the Visitor Activity Enhancement. For 2020, we have a $40,000 budget. We had $9,400 that was unused funds for a total of $49,400. We've committed so far $14,000, $7,000 for the Festival Society, and $7,000 for the fireworks, leaving a remaining balance of $35,400. Potential sources of funding for this function is partially or fully funding the request based on funds from the RMI program, increasing taxes by 0.22%, partial entire funding from the Community Service Grant Program, or cutting services or programs to allocate funds. Options before council is council funds all or a portion of the funding request based on identifying revenues from one of the above noted sources of funds, or option 2, council denies the request. And administration is recommending supporting the Osoyoos Lake Paddle Club in the amount of $6,000 from the RMI Visitor Activity Enhancement Program.
Thank you very much. I had a question. First of all, go ahead. Do you have a question?
I've got a comment. So
Yes, okay, we'll both do it then. I'm wondering where Music in the Park, the 19,000 that we've already allocated, is that not from this fund, or is from a different one?
No, it is from this fund.
Yes.
We contributed this year's money from last year. So it's already, the funding's already been distributed
Okay,
for
so
the
that's-
2020 Music in the Park.
That's why it's not here.
So
Okay.
what we're doing for future events moving forward is in October, we'll do a request for proposals, put it out to everybody that to make application for this funding. So it gives everybody an opportunity to apply for it.
Right,
And it'll be Music in the Park included for 2021 funding.
yes.
So
My only concern was I thought that the Festival Society was sort of in the same boat as Cactus Jalopies if they were going to do it, and with the Music in the Park. No, but it was
So,
done in a different. Okay.
Festival Society has been awarded $7,000 for the 2020 year.
Yeah.
Cactus Jalopies hasn't made any request, and I don't believe they may not be doing it this year.
They're
if I'm
not doing it
mistaken.
this year.
So,
So
you
they
know,
won't
so
be-
we're not listing them as a potential source
Okay.
of using funds.
Okay, just wanted to make sure, figure out where that was going. Go ahead, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor McCordoff. I have several comments. I'm going to speak against this funding request. In my view, self-interest groups such as this, and I don't use self-interest in a derogatory way, people join because they want to participate in the activity, paddling, car renovation, sailing, drag racing, pickleball, whatnot. And in my experience, all of those organizations tend to do regattas or bonspiels or tournaments, and they're all fundraising opportunities generally. They're designed to A, host a tournament, but also to raise funds. And again, in the experience that I have, they're successful in doing so. They budget within their own means, they raise funds, and they, pay out their expenses. On the other hand, what we were just talking about, Festival Society, the fireworks, Music in the Park, those are really civic endeavors. People are volunteering their time for really, not for their, for participation in an activity, but for, you know, it's a civic endeavor, you know, give back to the community. And so, you know, they have no source of funding. They don't have membership. Well, they have memberships, but they don't really otherwise have sources of funding other than donations. The second reason that is there's no budget presented here. We don't know their annual budget. We don't know the event budget. We have got no information whatsoever. The grant and aid program, which is going to get looked at, I think, in the near future, insists on all of that kind of financial information before, so that we can scrutinize, so we can see that this $6,000 request is a reasonable, fits in, they're being fiscally responsible. And the $6,000 for a race official, again, to me, is quite outrageous. Again, anecdotally, the sailing club hosts a regatta every year, brings in a Sailing Canada certified race official as part of his budget. The total budget, including that, is less than half of this ask. They've got to be able to find an official for a lot less than $6,000. So again, it goes to budget and transparency, and what are they doing? The event's great. I like it. Now it's a question of taxpayer funding, even though it's RMI. It's still a fiscal question to me. And so I would support the activity by way of in-kind support. We know, for example, Penticton hosts the Ironman Triathlon, and they claim to give hundreds of thousands of dollars towards it, but it's all in-kind support. Putting out picnic tables, trash bins, portable toilets, things of that nature, through their public works department putting in the energy and claiming overtime or whatever, however they come up with the number. So, because of those considerations for me, I think we support them with in-kind to the extent we can, but not with funding at this time, not in the way that's been presented to us. So I will move option 2, that we deny the request.
Good, thank you. Is there a seconder for option 2? I will second it then. Did you, go ahead, Councillor Rhodes, did you have a concern?
I can wait.
No, go ahead.
Thank you, Member Kordoff. Regrettably, I was not here during this presentation, but I did hear it, and I'm just wondering if you could refresh my memory. Do we have any idea what their total budget is? This is kind of a little bit of a rhetorical question based on Councillor Harvey's comments. Not seeing a budget, you don't know. Just to kind of exaggerate things a little bit, it is possible that they are a financially viable organization. My point is we don't know that at this time, and I'm wondering if that information is available. Do you know?
Yeah, that information was not provided.
Yeah.
Because I provided everything that they had presented to us during that meeting.
Yeah, just, vetting this situation out during the debate process here, sometimes changes things that look really good, and sometimes it, they just kind of morph into different ways of doing things. I think I would have a hard time supporting this request without that financial information. I'd hate to kill the whole program on them, though, but the due diligence part of their presentation should have had that information in it, in my opinion, because you just don't know.
Absolutely, got you. Councillor King.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess my question would be to the staff, if there's an opportunity, I don't know if you'd table it or move it a month and request more information before we make a decision.
You can do that.
Yeah, I think that's what should be recommended.
So, just a minute, we have a motion on the floor.
No one
Candace.
seconded.
Yes, I
Or
did.
did,
Yeah,
sorry.
recorder did.
So the, it is that we go with, we deny the request. That is where the motion is right now. So let's vote on that first, and if need be, we could make another motion. Does that make sense? All right, so, yeah, go ahead, Councillor Rhodes.
Just one other quick comment. Anybody that's listening to this debate, it would be mandatory that any request for funding be accompanied with financial statements in the future. I know that's a generalization, but it sure boosts up our level of confidence with these requests, because you don't want to be giving taxpayer money away to, groups that don't necessarily need it. So,
Absolutely, thank you.
thanks for that opportunity.
Councillor Bennett?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I sort of think that when they spoke to us, the fellow they're bringing in is not so much an official as he's an event coordinator. I believe he runs the ones like in Penticton and the other larger ones. So I think they're bringing this fellow in to be more of an event coordinator.
And
It's not gonna make a difference, but it just gives you an idea. That
Right.
He's not just an official who's gonna come here and say
They-
you won or lost, right?
they did get some money last year, kind of at the last minute, when I believe that they were looking at this, and they did pay an event coordinator last year out of that. So we might have, you're quite right, been better off to ask for that when they came at that meeting and say, we'd like to know what you're spending all this money on. So I get it, yeah. But they did have somebody last year. I think it would be somebody who was a little more qualified this year. I think last year was their first opportunity to do this. All right, so let's look at option number 2, and that is that council denies the request. All in favor? Okay, so that has passed. Is there an opportunity to come forward with another option at this point, or do we say, sorry, that this is not doable this year, or how do we deal with this, Mr. Chabot? Can we do something, or do we leave it the way it is at the moment? I mean, I agree that we need, if possible, we like to encourage these types of activities, but they have to be done correctly.
Yeah, Your Worship, I guess strictly speaking, the request has been denied, so doing something otherwise that would cause council to reconsider it would be, in effect, a reconsideration. I think Councillor King's motion and idea of tabling it pending, but the question that I have, and I don't know the answer, is community grant applications closed on Friday. Did they additionally apply for a community grant? And if so, the application process there should have detailed the financial information, the background information that was going to be required to look at your ask. So it may well be, maybe,
I doubt if they did.
no, they think maybe this was
Yeah,
coming
I
their
doubt
way?
if they, yeah.
Okay. We certainly could request further information, more details, a budget for their event, and bring that additional information back to council.
And they could then reapply if they wanted to, or do we tell them that they had to apply next year? Is this?
I would suggest if the mayor allows it to come back forward to readdress it, we could readdress it with new information,
Excellent.
Okay,
because that would be your prerogative to do that.
all right.
My caution about it is in
Yes,
part,
I know.
RMI funds are specifically not supposed to be used for wages. They're for events, they're for performers or for acts. Certainly, we can't cover some of our internal costs of supporting events with those funds, such as employee wages. So this is a little bit different, but if we could see the budget, you might see how the funding support might help other areas of their event as opposed to the race director and his crew who were coming to town to receive those funds.
Thank you. I'm going to let Councillor Harvey speak.
Well, I was going to say, we give them the bad news and let them go for this year, and we support them as best we can with in-kind support through town, and welcome them next year. The question was asked
Yeah.
when they were here 2 weeks ago, or a month,
Whenever it was, yeah.
would you survive without the funding? And the answer was yes, we'd have to scramble, but we could. So I'm not,
I'd forgotten that
I
part,
don't
so,
feel that the event is at risk. I think we should espouse support for them, but they have to do a lot clearer job in holding up their
Okay.
hat.
Fair enough. Councillor King.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I wouldn't support that. I'd go the other way. I mean, we kind of stuck our neck out last year and give them $5,000. So I'd rather put a motion on the floor that they be asked to bring back more information or a budget specifically to review the opportunity. Something along those lines.
Is that the appropriate way to deal with this, or does it have to come from the mayor's chair? I wasn't sure.
No,
From what you
it
said.
It's a
could come,
resolution.
yeah, you could
Yeah.
make that
Yeah.
resolution. We
Yeah.
would reach out to them and get
Alright.
more information.
Councillor King, you're making
Yes.
that? Is there a seconder? Councillor Bennett? And so did you get that, Mrs. Hilson, that they would reach out to them, say it was turned down, but if they came back with a budget, we could look at it again? Is that correct? Okay. So all in favor of this, of the motion, the way it stands now, that we ask them to come back? Against? Okay, that was a 3-2 vote. You got that, Mrs. Hilson? Okay, thank you very much. That's passed. Suis and District Museum, Mr. Zackel.
Thank you. So a presentation was made by Matt Hassan asking for financial assistance in the amount of $10,562 to offset the costs associated with the development and building permits for the renovations of the new museum location. Potential sources of funding to cover this would be to increase taxes by 0.39%. Forward request for consideration of funding in full or in part from the Community Service Grant Program, or cut service and programs to allocate funding. Options before council. Council funds all or a portion of the funding request based on identifying revenues from one of the above noted sources of funds. Option 2. Council forwards this request to the Director of Community Services to be considered along with the Community Service Grants and Aid request for 2020. And Option 3, Council denies the request. Recommendation before council. Administration recommends Option 2, that this request be forwarded to be considered from the Community Service Grant Program.
We got a letter from the Museum Society too, dated February the 18th, which was after the fact that they came. I think it was when they came, it was about the end of January, wasn't it? Or was it
That was
February?
at the budget meeting.
Oh, it
Right,
was
the budget
February
meeting.
the
And that's-
18th, that's when we had it?
Yeah.
That was late this year, we usually have it in January, which is why am I thinking. Councillor King?
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's pretty hard to choose option 2 when the deadline was last Friday to submit to the community services. So again, I don't know if that can be reworded, or we gotta put a different option on the table.
Their application or their request was actually in before February 28th, so it's just council never had a chance to deal with it
Okay,
in this context, so we have physically received that.
and is that the same amount?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
Okay,
sorry.
so your suggestion is that, that we, move it to the community service grant. So if it's already there, Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mayor McCordoff. So a couple of questions. If we chose option number 1, can we do that? Because aren't many of these situations, like building permits and so on and so forth, covered by bylaws?
Correct. We can't waive the fees, so you need to find a source of funding to pay for these fees if
Okay.
we're utilizing our funds. So we're either using reserves, we're either increasing taxes to pay for it, or we're using our grants and aid to pay for it.
Is that the reason for the 0.39%?
Correct.
And that we can do that without bylaw amendments?
Well, correct, because you'd be increasing taxes by an additional 0.39% to cover offset those costs.
Is part of this funding request for demolition disposal at the landfill?
The particular request didn't include that, but that has been an item of concern for them.
Yeah.
And that was an item that I suggested they consider adding to a community grant application as well. Those fees are probably approaching $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't paid them yet. They've assured us that they would one way or another.
Is that covered by sorry to interrupt, is that covered by bylaw as well?
Yeah, the landfill tipping fees would be established by bylaw as
Yeah,
well.
we can't do anything.
So we made a little bit of room in community grant budget by moving some of the items to the RMI program. And so we anticipated that there'd be a good opportunity for council to look at providing them some support. One of the things they were adamant about was, we said we weren't gonna come and ask for more money. I said, well, this is a pivotal year in your history, though. You're moving to a new building. This doesn't happen every year. So I said, I think you can justify and ask over and above your usual operating grant.
Would it be appropriate to let us know what the funding request through the community grant program is, the amount?
I asked that of Director Davis this morning, and he hadn't had a chance to compile them all yet. So he's working on that. But from what I understood is this request may have been also included in their original ask for the landfill tipping fees. But I can't confirm that.
If I could, Member
ahead.
Korhoff, just a comment. I don't really know what direction to go with this because I don't want to send a message out into the community that we're kind of stepping around our bylaws and that type of thing. And I think the optics of it may be that we are. The one thing that I do know is that so much of that work that's going on over at the museum, not only with moving out of the old one and the renovation that's going on there, is being done by a volunteer component in our community. And that makes me want to support this request an awful lot. I would stick my neck out and say most of the work over there is being done by a volunteer component in our, particularly the grunt work, all of the dirty work over there, and picking up all those old shingles and those. And, you know, you may think it's not much, but it's a lot. There's a lot of volunteer time putting in there. So I'm not going to support number 2. I think I would like to support this request for the exact amount that they're asking for.
Okay, so.
That would be a motion.
We haven't had a motion made on this yet? Okay, so you're moving option number 1 then, is that correct?
It's a little ambiguous. I would say for the full amount that they.
For the full
are
amount of
asking for.
$10,562.
And that would be attached to the source, the 0.39%, I guess.
No, you don't want to do that, you don't want to increase tax, you just want to, am I correct, that you?
It represents a 0.39% increase in taxes. So it's either we're increasing taxes by 0.39%, or I'm having to ensure that there's enough in reserve funds to cover those. But it's basically, it represents a 0.39%.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to attach to that reference in that as well. So the
Okay.
transparency is there.
I just wanted to make one comment
I
first,
wanna
then
comment
both of
too.
you, yeah. I do think that the unfortunate incident the other night over at the museum where a lot of the equipment was stolen has left everybody with a bit of a bad taste. I did see one bright spot. I'm sure there are several others, but one that I knew of was that Home Hardware made a donation of some of the tools that had gone missing, and then they showed that. It kind of shows that people in the town are definitely supporting and businesses the museum effort. So I certainly understand that. Now, Councillor King, then Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess the question would be, if this got supported, where would that money come from? But on the other note, because we've taken money out of grant and aid to RMI for the Festival Society and the fireworks, I feel quite confident there will be extra money in the grant and aid program to support this. But the question is how much they really ask for would be the unknown component.
It may not be exact 10,500, you mean, it might be a
Well,
different number.
So it's
Yeah.
only 6, they'd be short 5. So I guess my first question, if we supported what Councillor Rhodes said, where would that money come without increase in taxes, if we have any? Is my first question.
So where that would end up having come if we don't increase taxes, it's either coming from the community grants and aid, number 1, or number 2, it's coming from reserves.
Okay.
That's the only other 2 places that we can do that. Or increase fees and charges somewhere, or decrease services.
Okay, so then if I'm hearing you correctly, if we support Councillor Rhodes and you have to take it out in grant and aid, that would indirectly assure them getting this full amount out of gaming in case they ask for less. Yeah, okay, we can do that.
Hang on, did I catch that?
think
Or
so.
did you have something to say first, Councillor Harvey? Go ahead.
Yeah,
Better if they did.
I can't support any increase in taxes after what we've asked the taxpayer of this town to already cough up in this year's budget. Another 0.4 is seems small, but it's too much. I'm not really that worried about the optics of forwarding it to the grant and aid program for their consideration, in the sense that there's adequate budget over there. So not having heard a seconder would move option 2.
We haven't, but just a minute, because if there's any more, we do have a move that we go with
I'll
option 2.
second that.
Are you seconding
Yeah, I'll
that?
second that.
Okay. So, Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Taxation is important to understand. Our community grant funding comes from taxation as well. And it's not, it's not like we're giving both, or I know at this time we don't know, but it's not like we would be giving this request and their request at the community grant program level when that decision is being made. So the money is coming out of taxation. I know we've allocated the funding to the community grant program already, and that's part of our taxation number for the year. But sometimes you need to make changes based on, a profound community need by volunteers in our community that are working hard for an asset that will be enjoyed by people for 50 years in our community, because that's what the renovation is doing right now. So I feel very comfortable about making a motion. I feel comfortable about supporting it because I think it's a valuable component of our community.
Thank you. Councillor King?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just because we're taking option 1 doesn't mean taxes are going to increase. Again, I feel very comfortable that the Community Service Grant Program will have sufficient funds to offset this cost.
It is a little bit confusing the way it's worded
one of
when
the
we
4
consider this. So that what it says is identifying revenues from one of the above noted sources of funds.
Yeah,
So
that's the key
that
word,
does
one.
not specify that it has to be an increase in taxes.
Yeah.
It specifies that one of those areas could be considered. How would we decide which one of the, or Councillor Rhodes, am I speaking out of turn? Were you specifically saying that it should be tied to the increased taxes of 0.39%? Or would it matter if that same amount came out of grant and aid?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. One of the things that we do often when we're crafting these resolutions is we do a little wordsmithing at the beginning,
Okay.
and that's exactly what I was intending to do at the beginning.
Okay.
That didn't happen. We just kind of jumped into the debate process right away. I think I noted that I was not totally happy with the wording and
So
the
it's
report.
been moved and seconded. Would you like to wordsmith this and then check with the seconder that he agrees with it?
Well, I don't think we can do that now.
We haven't
Well-
voted on it yet.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
Would take a
Yeah, what does it read
consensus
now?
of
One of
of
the
the
above.
council.
It reads option number 1, the way it's said. From my point of view, I'd rather see it says take it out of one of the noted sources above, and I would say make sure it comes out of the community grants rather than an increase in taxes. However, you're making the motion, so.
Okay, that sounds like an easy way of getting out of it. What if we don't know what it is? The grant program is closed. We can't take any other direction. We can't make any edits to the request. What if it was intended for some other purpose?
My thinking is because we've taken some things out of that normal grant and aid process, put them in RMI, that we do have extra money in there this year. Not extra, but I'm sure we could find a place to use it, but we didn't use it all last year, did we?
What if their community grant program request was for $1,000 for some minor project within inside of the building? The committee that's going to evaluate those requests is not going to say, well, that's no good, we're going to give them $10,562 just because we want to. You can't change the request now. It's closed.
Well, like,
No, but, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, you
The
and
way
then
this
Jim.
is read, though, well, I guess it's not quite, if you look at number 2, it would definitely go to community services. And like even number 1, it says for the community service grant, and it supports this total amount of funding. But again, you gotta change a few words, I believe. So
Would
if they
you
did
like-
ask for less, you could still support this.
Would you like to specify that whatever it came out of, it had a minimum of 10,500? Would that help or not? The ask, go ahead.
So I'll make it very simple. I would like to see it come out of reserves. Is that the correct term?
And
Sure.
that's an option,
Yes, okay.
I'll second that amendment.
okay? So having it come out of reserves. What happens now if, this is a what if they have asked for this amount of money out of the grant and aid program? And 2 of our councillors are on that program, or deal with that. If it was on there, does it still need to come out of reserves, or could it come out of grant and aid? Is there an option to look at one or the other at that point or not?
Council, when it was considering the award of grant and aid funds, could withhold approval for an amount equivalent to that which you provided to the museum via reserves. So you'd remain in balance
Oh, okay.
at the
Okay,
end.
so there is a
But
way to.
unfortunately, we don't know what
Yeah.
we're gonna get in terms of applications in comparison to the budget.
We always know that there's more than what's asked for. That's
That's
been the usual
exceptional,
thing.
really.
We
I know.
make sure of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Councillor
guess it-
King and then.
I guess it would just be making another friendly amendment to add out of reserves or from the community service grant program. That way, we can take it out of 2 choices. That make it a little simpler.
Does that make sense or not?
It could come back when the committee comes and recommends to
Oh, yeah.
committee of the whole, here's what you should award. Then when it goes to council from committee of the whole, it can be said, here's how we're gonna fund it. So then it's finally known, because this gentleman needs to know
I
to build it
agree.
into the financial plan.
Yes, for sure. Now I'm really confused. So could you read what the motion is at the moment, please, Mrs. Hilson?
That council funds the Osoyoos Museum request in the amount of $10,562 from reserves.
Okay, and that was moved and seconded.
Well, we had Jim seconding the motion because he was the first person that seconded the motion.
Well, it's been moved and seconded, that motion, so we need to vote on that first?
No, I get, so now the question is, do you,
He
If
just
count-
accepted amendment, but
yeah,
there is
if
no
council, yeah, if Councillor Rhodes is okay with the friendly amendment proposed by Councillor King with the addition of,
But it was Councillor Harvey who seconded.
no, Councillor King
I
was,
seconded what I thought was an amendment.
yes,
Yeah.
no, so
Okay,
Councillor
pardon
King
me.
had to be the one to be
So-
okay with the first amendment to the motion.
All right, so Councillor King,
The
because he
friendly
seconded it, is asking for an adjustment to that. Councillor Rhodes, are you all right with that? Yeah, go ahead.
No, he wants it.
Thank you again, Member Kordoff. I'm struggling with that amendment, or that friendly request, or whatever we want to call it at this point, because just because you apply for a community grant does not mean you're going to get one, correct? That's a fair statement that I believe to be true.
Or it could be less than what you asked for.
It could
Correct,
be
that's-
changed, it could be added in, anything could happen to it. So, just looking at it from the bigger picture, what if there was $250,000 in community grant requests? You cannot give it all out. By doing it this way, we would be compromising some of those other requests, in my mind. And I can't,
Not the way it's worded, though. It says it's coming from reserves.
Yes.
That's in addition to.
yeah, but now we're debating about the request to change that.
Just it come out of reserves or the community
I
grant.
think.
I'm just looking at reserves or community grant.
Yeah,
That
we
word.
definitely want to pay for this, is what I'm getting from most everybody. We just want to figure out how to do it. So, Mr. Zackel, does it make sense then to keep it sort of clean that we go with the first, that motion, that we bring it out of reserves, and at the next time when the grant and aid comes back, we look and perhaps make an adjustment then or not?
It's, by using reserves, you utilizing additional town funds that are available for other capital projects, other projects. Prioritizing the museum funding or the museum ask and utilizing a pot of money that council has to give out to communities for different functions, it just becomes a priority of which one's the higher priority of council for distributing those fundings. Yes, it does work by saying, we'll take it out of reserves or grants and aid. However, that's definitely council's decision to make. I will do whatever council wishes.
Yes, no, we appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mayor McCardoff. If we took the money and took it out of reserves and the grant aid after it was all said and done and there was $10,500 left in there, could that money be put back into reserves?
Yep.
Definitely.
Yep. As long as it's not given
Identified.
out.
Yeah,
It's available to give out,
yeah.
if it's not used, so.
All right, so the motion is, has it got an addition to it, or is it just that it's coming out of reserves?
I don't know if Councillor Harvey's okay with the friendly amendment.
Yeah, I would not accept that amendment, that
Okay.
friendly amendment.
So
And
you would
were you
prefer
okay with
just
the-
say to have it come out of reserves?
Yeah. And if I can make one other comment?
Okay, and Councillor King, are you okay with leaving it that, or because you seconded it this?
Yeah,
Did
that's
you?
Okay.
same difference.
ahead.
anyhow.
So the grant and aid program, is a program that's, the money is allocated by committee to council members and a staff member. Their recommendations must have council approval by resolution.
Yeah.
That would be our time and our opportunity to look at that aspect of it and what we would do if there was any residue money left over from it because of this situation. And that way the optics are good, it's transparent, and, I've already pitched the reason why I put the resolution on the floor. So to me, it's not fail-safe, but it's pretty close
Okay,
to being that.
and I'm correct, it's Councillor King that seconded that? Yes, Councillor King, are you
Yeah, that's
okay
fine.
with seconding
That's
that? All right, so let's go with, this would be, I don't even know which one it is now. Which option is it?
It's a new one.
It's a new option that we use the money to support this out of reserves. Am I correct in that? Okay. All in favor? Okay, we're done. Thank you, Mr. Zackel. Next one.
Simon Marcelli.
Yes.
A request was made by Mr. Marcelli asking council to have their own engineering department and hire their own civil engineer, thus doing away with contracting for engineering services. Services required to fully equip an engineering department are not feasible for a small municipality. A request for quotations was done a few years ago to ensure the town of Osoyoos was receiving value for services being received, and True Consulting at that time had the lowest rates of the engineering firms that had provided their quotes. In addition, all of the design drawings are the town's property, and we get copies of those electronically and in paper upon request at any time.
Good.
So our options before council is option number 1, council hires a civil engineer. Or option number 2, council denies the request. And a recommendation from council or from staff is option number 2, council denies the request.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, just a question that came up when Mr. Marcelli's presentation was, what are the engineering fees on an annual? Is there a line item budget for that
There,
aspect?
in our budget, we have, in our general water and sewer, we've got a small component for engineering services, general engineering. So I think in our general fund, there's 10,000. Water and sewer, I think the same thing. If it relates to a capital project, we always budget engineering and contingency into the total project. And that line item always shows, I believe, 30%, 10% of which is usually what the engineering costs are, and 20% is the contingency. But they lump that together for budget purposes, so.
Okay, Councillor Bennett.
Yes, to the chair, to Mr. Chabot, when he says here council hires a civil engineer, a lot of these projects, there's lots of different engineers. There's not just civil engineer, there can be the water, there can be sewer, there can be, so if you
That
hire a
is one
civil
of the problem
engineer.
with being a small municipality is the various disciplines within engineering. And sometimes we need them all. We need wastewater engineers, we need civil engineers, we need structural engineers. We wouldn't have the capacity to hire someone who was well-versed in all of those various areas. And what it allows us to do if we're on contract is to scale up rather quickly and scale back down when it's not needed. We live with a construction window in British Columbia, although granted it's much longer here in Osoyoos. In other small communities, your ability to tender and get work completed in the construction period, and if you're relying on a single individual as an engineer to actually get those tenders and works bid and awarded and then overseen, becomes nearly impossible. And so I'm confident that we're doing it the best way for this community. Even though, you know, Helios says the report from a decade ago, wouldn't it be nice? Well, yeah, it would be, but anybody that's internal to our organization then becomes captive to organizational processes and things that consume your time as well. We don't have that with contract engineers.
Good.
So
Thank
if
you.
that-
And my assumption is that True has a variety of engineers, and they then use whichever one is necessary for the project.
And
So,
they will
yeah.
use sub-consultants when necessary
Yeah.
too. So once a year, just in regards to the question about what do we pay them, in the SOFI statements each year, we'll show the total amount paid to True Engineering. And it'll be for all engineering works, for different designs, for overseeing construction, for archaeological monitoring and keeping track of those things, designing things. It's quite a range of work actually that they do.
Good. Councillor Bennett and then Councillor
I would
Rhodes.
move number two, or
Thank
number
you.
one, sorry. Number two.
Number 2.
Number two, yeah, I get mixed up.
Are you seconding that? Thank you. Is there any other concerns about this? Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam McCorduff. Just a quick question about the dollar value. When we apply for grants, we often get different ratios. We have to pay a certain amount and the grant program pays for it. When we do the costing for those jobs, is the engineering component of it sometimes paid by the grant
Absolutely.
portion of it? So if there's $50 million on our financial statements, does not mean that the town, through taxation or whatever, paid all of that amount out.
That's correct.
Yeah, and sometimes, and I always hate choosing a person's name, but Mr. Maselli has asked us the same question for 14 years that I'm aware of every year, and perhaps maybe that component should be brought forward at some point to maybe help him feel a little bit better about it. You know, it's often deceiving. You see the amount, you think you pay it all, but actually in a lot of cases we don't, really.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor that we go with option number 2. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Zackel. Oh, we have one more.
Yep.
Sorry.
This is from Ms. Callisto. Made a request asking why the children's programs are not being expanded. And in the 2020 budget for the children's programs, this budget's actually being increased by 7.22% for 2020. And while revenues for this program have remained static, community service staff are continually looking to find new programs that this age group will attend. The challenge for children's programs is getting good enough turnout to put on the program. Since the budget meeting on the 18th, Mrs. Callisto has been in discussions with Gerald and Sarah, bringing forward her ideas for new programs. So they've been working with her to try to see how they can fit and expand. So they're very happy to talk to her on that.
Good.
So options before council was option 1, council maintain the 2020 budget as presented, or option 2, council increase the children's program budget. And the recommendation was option 1, to maintain the current 2020 budget as presented.
Thank you very much. Councillor King,
I'll move option 1, maintain 220 budget as presented.
seconding that. I just remember when Ms. Callisto was here and we suggested that she talk to the Sonora Center staff, and she obviously has. So I'm glad it has a positive outcome here. So all in favor of option 1. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Zackel.
Thank you.
And now we have Mr. Chabot, Town Hall.
Hi, Your Worship, thank you. As council knows, a request for proposals was issued in December of 2019 for a town hall space needs assessment and a pre-design. Council had allocated $85,000 in the capital budget last year to undertake this work. That item was carried forward to this year's budget. In 2018, the town commissioned a condition assessment report for Town Hall and had David Nairn and Associates come and take a look at the condition of the Town Hall, which is more than 50 years old. You all know it well. You know that the space next door is vacant. The old fire hall with some shoring to support the floors above and the roof. You know that town planning and development by law enforcement offices are in a separate building just across the way here. That report seemed to conclude that, council, you could build new buildings at a lower cost than initiating repairs and renovations to the existing building, and that in either event, new construction or major renovations would need to occur within 5 years from the date of the report. And that was the 2018 report.
Okay.
And so some decisions have to be made. The RFP that was issued asked the consultant to look at the current condition and capacity of town hall buildings with a view to accommodating needed services and functions for the foreseeable future. We had suggested a 50-year window. This building served the community for 50 years, and whether this is redone, rehabilitated, or new, should consider service demands and space needs for that time frame. We got a total of 8 responses to the request for proposals. 3 of them were eliminated from further consideration due to material non-compliance with the requirements of the RFP. And mostly that was around providing an indication of the hours allocated to each element of the services requested and the personnel assigned to those. We asked for a level of detail so we knew who was going to do what parts, so that we could fairly judge the qualifications of key term members and the allocation of hours to what was really a 3-phase project, being a space needs assessment. First of all, look at the functions within a town hall, look at adjacencies and things that would contribute to efficient and effective work to improve customer service, to then, after determining your gross space needs and the evolution or planned or thought about evolution of technology and office equipment, because that's basically what we do at Town Hall and greet the public and meet with the community, was to do then a feasibility study that would look at the potentials for renovation or rehabilitation for new town hall construction, either on this current site or at alternative locations with none yet in mind. And then to move into a pre-design and develop basically 3 short-listed options to present to town council. And the town council would then review those. The idea was to also look at ways to build a more sustainable or net zero ready type building or renovation to reduce life cycle operating costs. After we were done the evaluation and the proposals, also to look for do a preliminary scan of what types of building designs and technologies are likely to attract opportunities for grant funding. Sometimes there's woodworks funding, sometimes there's solar energy funds. What types of opportunities should be explored as well? After looking at the bids individually, the Director of Finance, Director of Corporate Services, and we then combined our evaluation scores, and the highest ranked firm was Sahuri, who have offices in Calgary and Kelowna. They've got a lot of experience across the architectural spectrum, have experience doing detailed feasibility, spatial and assessment studies for municipal offices, libraries, public works, protective services, recreation facilities, and community centers. And then they've teamed up with 3 Point Environmental, who would undertake sustainability assessments of the 3 identified options, and Altus Group, who would provide cost estimates, and these are Class D construction cost estimates for the various options. And so the recommendation is that Sahuri be awarded the contract at a total fixed lump sum price of $79,720. As I mentioned earlier, the budget for this was $85,000. Of the compliant bids that we got, they ranged in price between $77,000 and the full $85,000 as published with the RFP.
Good. Thank you very much. Councillor King.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. When this went out for consultation, was there a component they'd be looking at? Is it just the building specific, or would they look at options to partner, like make the building bigger or anything?
Yeah, we asked them to consider other potential uses, whether they be not-for-profit or commercial, so part of the exploration stage.
Oh, well,
Some of the other considerations would be do you want your Director of Operational Services working remotely up at the Public Works building? Do you want your Director of Community Services working out of the Sonora Center? Or does it make sense that those functions are located more proximate to folks with expertise like Mr. Zackles for capital planning, for budgeting, for budget oversight? We took out the suggestion that a partner might include co-locating with an RCMP detachment. There isn't a whole lot of shared space. There isn't a lot of economies of scale because their programmatic requirements and their security measures are really quite different than a town hall where we open the door to anyone who shows up at our doorstep. So it really hasn't been found to be efficient to co-locate our CMP with town halls.
Okay.
And so there's the opportunity to share space is limited, but I think we should think about other things. Seniors, activity centers, daycares, who knows? Just consider the range of things that could occur and see. I don't really know how you would integrate commercial space into a town hall as small as ours. In the large urban centers where you've got a couple thousand people working at a town hall, some commercial space, a coffee shop, a deli makes some sense because you've got a captive audience. Well, that isn't the case here.
I'm wondering about any health-related businesses, because of course we have been asked about that too, supporting that, and I don't know whether that would be part of the discussion here or not, but perhaps we could mention that to them and just see what kind of experience they've had or whether that would work or not.
Yeah, and basically it said you were going to, in the feasibility study phase, look at the potential integration with additional space for commercial ventures or other community uses. So,
Okay, so it would include everything.
Could be one of those that might make a whole lot of sense too. Given that you're going to locate a facility like this generally fairly centrally too.
And the other thing that occurred to me is that the Planning and Development Office, I think, is newer than this building. Certainly, it's newer than my office, which was the old school up at Fairview or somewhere, well before my time. And so I'm wondering if that had been considered, that if we were going to do something, maintain that part of it, which has had some upgrades to it, and add on to that. And I have no idea whether that's an option or not.
I just think there are service quality and efficiency improvements that can occur with a better designed town hall that considers adjacency and proximity to certain people who are parts of larger processes that involve other players. And this design that we have here right now doesn't work particularly well for creating synergy or collaboration or cross-pollination. I just think a proper design would really bring people together a lot better and foster better public service, which is what we're trying
We
to do.
get it. Jim and I go to a meeting up in Oliver, and they literally have to go across a back alley and up into a doctor's office to go to their meeting room, and they have to carry with them all of the water, the coffee, the tea, you name it, because they don't have that in their building. So at least we have.
Well,
we
they're
have the kitchen.
debating this in Revelstoke because the council chambers is across the street in a separate building in leased space that doesn't work particularly well, but they're needing to make some rehabilitation decisions on the exterior of a rather iconic historic building downtown. And there's those that are saying, well, we don't really care what you do to preserve this building. It'll never serve its current day purpose well because of its structure and design.
Okay.
And, it's a 1939 building.
Yeah.
Well,
Councillor
thank you,
King.
Madam Mayor. I guess one last question. When they do the feasibility study, they actually come and talk to people here in town or just staff?
No, it is to come here. I think these folks plan at least 3 visits
Okay.
during their
have some mo-
process. With council, what are council's
Okay.
needs? What are with
Yeah,
staff?
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
The broader community and other stakeholders, I don't really know how far-reaching that needs to be or if it will be. Certainly when presentations come to council at various points, public input's always welcome on
Yeah,
those.
for sure. Yeah,
Sure.
good, okay.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor King.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll move option 1.
All right, and Councillor Bennett, you're seconding that. Anybody else have anything? Okay, all in favor of option 1, that we go with Sahari. Thank you very much. And we do not have a notice of motion, but we will go on to general net payroll and Sun Bowl Arena financial accounts. And the net payroll accounts to March the 2nd represent balances in the following funds: general cash requirements of $730,759.02, and Sun Bowl cash requirements of $10,870.25. And those would both be adopted by consensus. And net payroll accounts of $91,860.09, and that would be for information. And we don't have any committee reports today, so could we have the CAO report, please?
Your worship, not a whole lot to report. For myself, I was fairly busy over the past 2 weeks, as was council, with a whole lot of meetings. We had committee of the whole, we had public hearings, we had regular open meetings, we had a couple of special open meetings, we had an in-camera meeting, so that consumed a fair bit of my time. But in the meantime, you and I met with some others and representatives of the RDOS with the Osoyoos Museum Society. Ms. McKay and I met with the representative of Parks Canada, gal who's heading up the discussion about a national protected area in this region.
Good.
And we'd encouraged her to come forward at some appropriate time, just with an update for council as to where they're at in that process and how that is unfolding, because it continues to move forward, not always that publicly. Just wanted to mention, Director Bronstein and I went to Penticton for a meeting with the RDOS and joined in the discussion they're having there about curbside organics and commercial organic composting as well. We'll see a lot more about that over the next year or two as plans come forward and get unveiled and I guess decisions get made. Community Services reminds us that the Volunteer Appreciation Awards are open for nomination, and people can get information on our website. Nominations are due by Friday, March the 20th. And there's the Outstanding Individual Volunteer Award, Outstanding Community Group Award, the Best Volunteer Project Award, and the Council-Appointed Committee or Task Force Member Award. And then, of course, there's the Volunteer Appreciation Event on, is it Saturday, April the 18th? Right, okay. Good. Corporate services, fair bit of time spent last week on emergency management. Emergency program coordinator position is one held by Ms. Van Vienen. And we had a quick overview of an emergency operations center led by Ann Ben from the RDOS on Thursday afternoon. And then on Friday, we spent the whole day reviewing a draft Town of Osoyoos evacuation plan that was being completed with a UBCM emergency preparedness grant that the town had obtained. Fire department's been busy. There was the incident at the Highland Inn, which displaced all persons that were residing in there. Emergency social services was brought out to help those that needed temporary accommodation locate it. And further inspection of the building resulted in the fire chief, under his authorities, issuing a do not occupy order until certain repairs and certifications for the systems there were improved. And so they continue to work on making those repairs. They aren't open yet to the public or to people to reside there. They need electrical and gas inspections, most importantly. Need a hazardous materials report on the unit that was destroyed by fire. And of course, you probably heard they were out again on Saturday this weekend to a fire on 100th Avenue, a structure built around and about a motorhome became involved in a fire. It and the motorhome were a complete loss. Fire department went, prevented fire spread to adjacent buildings. Sparks and firebrands were being blown hard by wind. And this, again, there's no known cause of this, but it heightens the fire chief's concern about the amount of orchard burning that goes on and ways to improve that. Because on the Saturday, if you check the venting index online, it would have said it was pretty good. Well, that's the venting index in Kelowna, not Osoyoos, and doesn't reflect local wind conditions. And if you recall, it was quite windy that day. Planning and development continue to work on the OCP update. Some stakeholder interviews are being scheduled for a housing needs report, and the consultants are working on drafting updated development permit area guidelines for consideration of inclusion in a new OCP. Who did I miss? Public Works, Operational Services, getting ready for spring, maintaining picnic tables, undertaking the pruning of all of the trees that we have, painting the interior of the washrooms that are heated, getting ready for a busy summer season. Work continues on the main wastewater lift station. The work has resumed on the repairs to the Cottonwood Park retaining wall. Won't be that far off, and a retaining wall at the fire hall property will be built, which will then accommodate the installation of a fence. The property is on the back, the back onto the fire hall parking lot. I'm going to use the same contractor there as is doing the work on Cottonwood Park retaining wall. Been satisfied with the work they've been doing. And the design for the water system extension to the south, the rural water twinning, continues with mostly an evaluation, I guess, of available flows and the impact on pressures, because regardless of what you do, residents in those regions are going to experience pressure change. And the idea is to try to at least maintain through all of that distribution network, at least single-family residential fire flows. May not be entirely achievable, but it should be. And the talk there is, if we've got some hydrants that have less flow, we need to identify them some way. We'll probably just paint the tops of them a different color, and the fire department will know what they can anticipate in terms of flow from the various hydrants. And also where the spacing is, because the system wasn't designed for firefighting. It was designed for potable water. And we're just debating now how many hydrants can we afford to install and where would they best be and on what spacing basis. And the idea is to, while it isn't necessarily about fire protection, might be able to positively impact fire insurance premiums and the ability to fight fire. But the spacing might be quite large, and it might be, just makes most sense, put hydrants everywhere there's an intersection. Then the department knows, if you want to find one, go to an intersection.
Okay.
And that's it for me, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. So could we have a motion, please, to receive the report? Thank you, Councillor King, Councillor Harvey, all in favor. Thank you. And we'll go on to council reports. Councillor Rhodes,
Thank you, Member Kordoff. I'm going to take a pass this week.
you're not even going to say you're happy to be home?
I'm
Go.
happy to be home.
Goes without saying.
Traveling where I traveled, I've now reinforced that Canada is the best country in the world, and I'm very, very grateful to be Canadian and living here.
Thank you. I thought that's what you were going to say. Councillor King.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. It has been a little quiet the last couple of weeks, but I did attend the South Okanagan Chamber of Commerce Business After Business, which was well attended with about 50 people there and good networking opportunities and trying to convince people to open businesses here in Osoyoos.
Good, thank you. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you. I met with, also the chamber meeting with Councillor King. I met with Mark Woods at the RDLS to keep the momentum going on the development of the bike trail. Had a follow-up meeting with 32 representatives from Okanagan, Kootenai, and Washington states, and looking at an international trail system. Had a meeting with Destination Associates Marketing Board. I was kind of interested in their marketing board report because it's amazing when you look on somebody goes online and says, I stayed at this motel and I had a terrible room or a really good room. They keep all those stats and you can actually break it down on which hotels, which motels. It's amazing some of the stats that people put online that Destination Associates has. Just a matter of how do you take that and make it into a positive for Associates for marketing. And then I attended the quarterly meeting of municipal insurance in Vancouver. And basically, I was kind of interested in talking about fire departments. There's $10 million claims, the largest one we put money on reserves for, and that was from a fire department. So it's really important to have that really good fire department, where they went and put a fire out in a building next to a can of tire, left, and the building come back and started smoldering on fire and burned down the can of tire. So it's going to be a huge claim, and there's going to be liability issues. So that's how important it is to have these proper fire department setups. And the nice thing about it, we're a member of the municipal insurance. Our liability rates this year are going to stay the same. A lot of the places like City of Vancouver and stuff, their premiums are doubling. You're talking millions of dollars in increases. And part of that is the municipal insurance goes and they do these different seminars around, and different communities go or don't go to these. And it was nice when they singled out Osoyoos because they had a seminar in, I believe it was Kelowna, and a whole busload of employees from the town of Osoyoos took the time to go up there and take these courses.
Good.
So that made me feel pretty good. That's my report.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, so to justify the $200 you guys approved on my meeting report.
Yes, we'd like you to break
Yeah,
that
so,
down, please.
yeah, I mentioned the strategic planning meeting in January at an earlier meeting. So there was more of that at the quarterly. This was the Q1 meeting 2 weeks ago. So there was elections. I volunteered for the Finance Committee this year in terms of elections and staffing these different positions. But most of the discussion was around strategic planning and going forward and what's the vision for the ORL. It's a little bit hard to grapple with from a small community and the limited amount of funding and hours and whatnot we've got to but anyway, it's ongoing. I have had I've had contact with a number of other directors who are on board with my notion that the current funding model is not quite fair from the lens of the rural small town branches. And so some interest in some discussion amongst, the few that I've identified so far. So we'll keep that conversation going and try and get it in because the funding model is quite unfair from the perspective of the small town. The other aspect, it's also library related, is you recall, I think it was 2 weeks ago or a month ago, Don Nettleson was here, as was Miss Brielle from our chief librarian. And she mentioned that for her program, she's got a mailing list of 90 names that she sends out information in terms of what the programs are. And so I talked to Ms. Kaur here about e-news and how much circulation there is. And there's like, it's over 400. And what other facilities. And so I put the two of them together so that the library can take advantage of municipal communications facilities to reach a broader audience for the programs. And that's conversations going on, and that's happening. I've stepped out of that loop now. Anyway, that was
Good. Thank you. Well, I heard from the chair of the library board, they were very happy to have you on the finance committee, so that's a good thing. I was at, one of the main things that I did over the last week was attend a climate change workshop. And, you know, I think we're getting a little bit tired of hearing climate change, and it tends to sort of, you know, you think, oh, not this again. But the lady that gave the talk, the main person, it was up in Kelowna, her name was Sheila Watt-Cloutier, and she was from Nunavut. That's where she had grown up. And so she was giving us a sort of an idea of what it was like to be from the Arctic and deal with climate change, which tends to be more evident there than in other places. And she had a couple of really good things that she said. The Arctic is the air conditioner for the planet. And I wrote that down because I thought that was a good one. And she's linked climate change and human rights. And human trauma and climate trauma are sort of the same. In other words, one of the things that she mentioned specifically was that a lot of the people up in the north hunted seals, and then it became not the right thing to do, and seal hunting was sort of cut way down. So a lot of these hunters up there that depended on seal hunting for a living were then now had way less money to deal with and less to do. And so what did they do? Go on social services. So that in itself brings in a whole bunch of concerns, because you're not feeling like you're providing for your family, and seal hunting is not what traditionally had been done. And so the fact that some of the icebergs are melting, and she said in March or February of this year, at the beginning of February when she left the north, there was still open water, and people were using their boats to get around instead of dog sled or snowmobile, which seems more what they're doing now. But she said it's not all doom and gloom. We just need to be aware that that we are matter of health and liveliness, and everything is connected. And the power of the human rights movement, we've seen that, we seem it more and more and more. One of the things that they have done is there's a thing called smart ice, and it's they're using technology, and it allows communities to adapt to the changing conditions of the ice and the snow, and to learn from the changes. And if they can plan safer routes across the water and across the snow and the ice, then it makes it much safer for all of the people that are up there. There's going to be a film, Brave Blue World, that's being shown in March, but it's in Kelowna, which is a little far for us. I don't think that day I can get to it. There was a panel discussion after from several people who were, experts in their field. One of them was Denise Nielsen, who is a scientist and is the chair of the Water Stewardship Council, which is part of the Okanagan Basin Water Board. And she said that what we need to do is try and protect foods in the Okanagan. And when she first came here from England, there were tons of mostly apple orchards. And she said, now you look at them, that's going, and what have we got? Grapes. So you have to kind of look at how those changes influence what we eat, what we do, that type of thing. Sheila said, the lady who spoke when asked, what can we do about this issue, climate change? Learn about the Arctic, understand the connections, but do not be alarmed. Politics, industries need to change. And Anna Warwick-Sears said, do not be isolated. Work together in communities. Social bonds are really important. And I think that in small towns, we certainly do that. And another lady who was involved with health said, be curious, put ideas on the table, use your imagination. And that's certainly what we encourage in education. And Jillian, what's her name? Jillian Vines. She gave a report on climate projections for the Okanagan region, and I had heard her once at the regional district table and then once again, and she has sort of looked at putting this book together. It's quite an interesting one. And she said, be thrifty when using fossil fuels. And I thought, well, that was an interesting way to put it. Fascinating, and if you ever have a chance to hear this lady, she's the lady who was the main speaker, Sheila Watt-Cloutier. She's very well spoken, very well thought of, and it was very interesting. So we've had other things reported on. I'm just going to say that in half an hour we do have a public hearing. If anybody is interested in having a look at that, it's been advertised on our website. So. Thank you, everyone, and could we have a motion, please, to adjourn the meeting? Thank you. Councillor King, Councillor Rhodes, all in